We are built to pursue pleasure and avoid pain. Our nervous systems are literally designed to do it. When we notice pain, we want to feel better as soon as possible. Today, we are going to explore the healing journey and specifically the time it can take to heal. I'm producer Steve Lassard, and each week I'm joined by my friend Dr. Jeffrey Rutstein as we explore how understanding your nervous system can transform the way you live, love, and relate. Hello, Jeffrey. How are you today?
Hey, Steve. I'm really well, thank you. And I'm looking forward to this topic today.
Yeah, me too. So friends, today on the Wired for Wellbeing podcast, I want to talk about the nature of healing and the healing journey specifically. It's something we hear a lot from individuals who we work with in various programs of how long it takes to heal and why does this take so long? So Jeffrey, that's what I wanted to talk about today. And maybe we can start by having you maybe operationalize this word healing. Can we start there?
Sure, that's a great place to start. So when I think of healing, and I use the word healing intentionally, different than, say, cure, which is like curing something, getting rid of all traces of it, having it not be there. With many of our experiences, trauma as an example, it's not that we can just cure trauma, but we can heal the damage and the adaptation to our nervous system. And by healing, again, I'm talking about the ability for us to feel and become more whole. The root of the word healing is from wholeness in Latin. And the idea of returning us to a sense of wholeness, of integrity, of being able to be in our body and not be so divided or fragmented or struggling one part of us against another part of us. So healing is taking out the conflict, reducing the conflict, and finding a way towards a more easeful and harmonious way of being with our own nervous system, our body, our ups and downs throughout the day, versus getting so knocked off course by them.
I think we can so easily want to jump to the solution and just give me the answer. Just tell me the thing and I'll do it, right? Just give me the cure.
Right.
And I love that definition of looking at healing versus curing potentially.
Right.
Can you maybe help us understand, why does this healing process take time? Why is there no magic pill?
Well, if we talk about healing from adverse events, from trauma, we're talking about learning a skill in a way, right? This is a skill of being able to begin to notice our nervous system, the way it speaks to us through moods, stories, thoughts, impulses, behaviors, and ways to work more in a partnership and an allyship with our nervous system versus fighting it or ignoring it. And just like learning a language or learning to play a musical instrument, it really takes time to grow this skill. This is different, by the way. This kind of learning in service of healing is different than just cognitive learning. Like if we just had to read a small book or a brief paper and get all the information we needed about how to heal, well, that would be great, except healing and wholeness isn't found in just more reading or thinking or concepts. It's actually learning how to relate differently to our own moment-to-moment experience in life. Instead of having us out of our moment-to-moment presence, instead all wrapped up in worries, fears, anger, despair, shutdown, depression. Instead of always complaining or being angry or scolding ourselves or the world for how it is, to find that there's a way of being with and in the world that doesn't have to feel so stressful, so much based in struggle, so much pain attached to it.
I'm reminded of a quote or a story that I'm probably going to butcher the details of, but the gist of it stuck with me. I was a musician, I'm a music major and a musician in my earlier life. And There was always a story from Pablo Casals, a world famous cellist. And in his elderly years, after a very successful life as a performing cellist, um, and every morning he'd get up and he'd play his scales. And someone would say, like, Pablo, why do you spend so much time on your scales? And he would say, I think I'm making progress. And that always stuck with me. Like, there's always these fundamentals like we can return to. And that's a little bit what I'm hearing you describe here in your music analogy and example, as well as in our skills learning example.
Yes. Yes. It takes a while, and we still can go back to fundamentals, but there is a way of relating to ourselves with a certain sense of kindness and awareness that actually reduces the friction in our life, reduces the inner friction and the outer friction that we can encounter.
So let's go to that relating to us, because I think another thing that I notice is we can place an ideal version of us somewhere in the future and feel like that us is something we need to move to, that person is healed or successful or whatever the things you want to put in, well or healthy, whatever those things are. And for people on a healing journey, um, I'd love to hear your thoughts about that putting that ideal us forward and thinking we've got to reach that point. And it's only when we hit that point that we can check the box of say, like, great, healed.
Right, right. So I think that humans do that with so many things, not just with healing, right? Like when I finish school, I'll be an adult. Or when I get my first job, or when I get married, or when we have kids, or when I own my own house or townhome, or whatever it is that we keep thinking about will be enough, good enough, lovable enough, secure enough when, and then we pick some idea of the future that will show us we've quote unquote made it. But of course, if anyone's ever watched this, you do arrive at that point, and then all of a sudden the goalposts have moved now another quarter of a mile in the future. Oh, well, you have a house and you have children. Oh, but we need a dog, or we need a fenced backyard, or we need to go away on a family vacation, or I need to make this much money, or whatever, right? It's something about an always moving target. And so that can easily come into our idea of healing, that I will be the perfect person, or I'll be without any neurotic tendencies, or I'll be always joyous. And we put these idealized perfection kind of thoughts into the future. And then I'll be ready for a relationship. Then I'll be ready to interview for jobs. Then I'll be ready to take care of my space, or get my health in order, or take care of this backlog of bills. It's as if we put our life down the road, and the idea that I'll be better at it, living my life and taking care of things, when I am the better version of me. And while healing is a process, it's really also important to not make a dichotomy of it and look at healing as one thing and living your life as something totally separate. They're intertwined together. And while we are improving, like Pablo Casals is always improving when he's playing his scales every morning, we can heal. But it's like, it's not that one day this idealized version of us will arrive. It's every time we practice, we are making forward movement. Every time we can have some awareness in the middle of an interaction of, oh, look, I'm shutting down right now. Oh, look, I'm getting frightened. That's a step forward towards healing. In other words, healing is happening. And we need to be able to also not lose sight of the moments of small shifts, because these are what give way to the large shifts, the large changes, just making small, teeny shifts when we can.
Wondering, you mentioned a few of them here just now, but I'm wondering if you can offer a few more examples of like what some of those small things are that might go unnoticed, but are potentially signs of a growing awareness or a growing healing.
For people who are very afraid to express their opinion, they don't want to alienate others or be rejected by them. So they tone down their opinions, or they don't say anything too strongly. They're very careful not to want to alienate or offend someone. And so they may notice that one day they actually just spontaneously said what they thought or felt, something they might not usually do. And it may have been a big thing or a small thing. It could have been like, oh, I'd like to get a coffee instead of, a big trip. It can be a small thing, but just the little movements that show that you're beginning to not be so hemmed in by fear of rejection, fear of harm, fear of loss, and instead are actually able to be more in touch with your desire to be you in life, you in relationships, whatever that you is, right? But to tell your truth or to offer your opinion. And again, these are little small things, or like noticing that usually you might shut down during an argument. And this day you actually noticed that you were about to shut down, and you could begin to slow yourself down about shutting down. Or you couldn't slow yourself down, but you could notice that it was happening in real time instead of noticing it an hour or a day later. So these are the little things when we become aware of things, even before we can do something about it. Even the ability to notice and name a state is a step, a big step in healing, right? Even beginning to see that it was our nervous system that was driving us to do these things versus a conscious choice about doing it, right? Like we can get angry and ashamed that we don't have more control over ourselves if we think that we're supposed to be able to just decide to do something and go ahead and do it. And that's often what we feel about healing. Well, I'm ready to heal. Let's heal. What do I got to do to get rid of this? But true healing is actually not about getting rid of something. It's about forming a different relationship with it. And in so doing, taking the problem out of it, changing our relationship to, say, substances, so that we're not as controlled by them, and that we can understand that we've been depending on them or using them because we feel so dysregulated, so stirred up or anxious, or so ashamed or despairing, that we need something to help lift us out of that space. And once we can learn other ways of doing it, we don't have to keep leaning on the substance in the same way. So it's not about doubling down on shame, right? It's about finding ways to relate to what we're already doing that might be trying to put one foot forward and at the same time taking one step backwards. It's kind of holding us in this stuck pattern a little bit. And it's when we can soften our adversarialness to our own symptoms. And that's another reason that healing can take a long time. There's three reasons I think that in general that healing, again, I'm just going to use this for trauma, is difficult and time consuming. One of them is that it's a whole lot of pain, and people are reluctant to want to go into a whole lot of pain. We're wired to stay away from pain. We're wired that we want to avoid it and things that cause us pain. And so there's a nervous system investment in trying to almost jump over the pain to get to the other side versus having to want to deal with the pain. And for people who've gone through trauma, that's often how they went through trauma too, is just trying to hold on to get through it, to get to the other side of it. And so they want to kind of do the same thing. Let me just get this over and so I can be healed. But the idea is they really don't want much to do with the pain. Ugh, it still feels threatening and uncomfortable. And I'll get to another point in a minute. It opens up a vulnerability in us. And so we just want the goodies. We want the healing. We want to be done. And there's this struggle about relating to our own pain. And there's ways we can get more skillful at doing that that can actually help us work with the pain without drowning in it. But that's one reason healing takes a while. Another reason for some trauma survivors is that their trauma may have been severe enough that they will have dissociated the abuse or aspects of the abuse. So I've worked with some people who had no clear memories of abuse, but they were massively dysregulated, had been suicidal and depressed most of their life, and couldn't understand why they were so afraid of relationships. And through exploration, they then began getting in contact with memories. But when they started therapy, they had no idea that that was part of what they were struggling with, maltreatment or abuse. So it can take sometimes a good while in therapy before someone discovers that actually there's also a history of harm that they have distance from. And then finally, and this is a big one, is shame. Shame is so insidious that with many trauma survivors, it actually can stand in the way of how much they can heal, that they can feel better, but only the allowed amount. They can't feel better perhaps than their parents could. They can't feel as happy as they'd like to because the legacy of the family, and to stay loyal to the family, I have to stay in that familial level of suffering instead of transcending it and becoming happier, more fulfilled in my life. And so those things, independently or intermixed with each other, can all impact the length of time it takes us to heal, to become whole again. And for almost all trauma survivors, uh, one thing they'll have to encounter is the shame, because shame is a limiting factor on trauma survivors' healing capacity. And that's something that needs to be worked with directly. That's probably one of the longest time takers.
I can even see holding on to the hand of that one walking alongside of it is the shame that we might feel from the time we think it's taking us to heal.
Exactly. There can be shame about our shame. There can be shame about how long it takes to heal. There can be shame about why aren't I over this already? Or shame about even needing it in the first place. There's other people who get abused and don't have to go to therapy or don't get healed. What's wrong with me? Right? Shame will always find a way for us to feel bad about ourselves, for us to judge ourselves.
There are moments in the programs we run that maybe in a live session, I'll describe it as a moment of awakening. Someone has a moment of awakening, right? Someone has this instant realization as they're talking to you and as you're working with them that they have a like, oh, that's what's going on here. So I also see this paradox that sometimes healing takes these seemingly really sudden steps up. And I don't know what your sense is of that. Am I interpreting that correctly, or is there something else going on there?
No, I think it's a very important point, is that if we get locked into thinking healing is in the future, we miss the moments that are occurring right now that are moments of healing, right? Like, I was working with someone the other week, and she usually freezes during conflicts with family, and she was able to speak her voice and to talk about her feelings and her frustration and her hurt and her anger. First time she's done it with her family in probably 20 or 30 years. It was very big, right? And in that moment, there was a capacity of healing that was taking place. She was demonstrating that the wiring is present to be able to let her take this risk, to let her articulate her feelings and present herself authentically to her family and withstand how they reacted, right? Which before this had been built up as such an overwhelming fear that she was terrified of doing it. In that moment, right, she still might have fears and some issues about bringing up stuff with them consistently, but she was able to get the experience that she could do this, that she didn't dissolve from doing it. They didn't attack her and reject her. But even more importantly, she noticed how good she felt afterwards, that she actually felt like she was doing something that she had wanted to do, and had actually years of shame about not being able to do, being too afraid to do it. And it felt like a brave and courageous thing that felt affirming for her. So um, it doesn't have to be that we solve all our problems, that we're fine all the time. It's any movement can be a healing movement, can be a transforming moment, right? Um, we can see this sometimes when, like, shame dissolves when it's faced with compassion and empathy. If you bring your shame to someone who responds to you with compassion and empathy, your shame will begin to subside, and you'll actually be able to see it for what it is, shame and a distortion, instead of the truth about you. And that moment won't necessarily eradicate all of your future shame, but it can help you begin to see through the trance of shame. So these moments of healing that take place now and now and now are what again eventually coalesce into a more large transformation. But it's these small little shifts here and there that are what help us move and make the bigger transformations in our life. They're just a collection of small moments, really. Does that answer that question, Steve?
Yeah, it really does. And I where it brings me, and I'm pausing to formulate the question, but I have an intuitive sense that I think we all want our healing to be linear, right?
Yes.
Every year I get 5% better. And at some point it's, getting close to 100% better, whatever that means, right? I know we talked about heal versus cure at the beginning, but I guess the point I'm trying to make is I think we think growth is purely a straight line, but there's got to be these plateaus, right? Like I see it in my own life where like I go in an intense growth and then I pause. Where I guess I'm trying to go is like, what does that look like on the healing journey? And what might we do when we find ourselves in maybe a plateau moment or a growth moment and say like, I never want this to end. And then it plateaus for, I don't know, could it plateau for 2 years, 5 years, 10 years?
Sure. Sure.
What might that look like?
So again, um, we usually plateau because we've come up against something that feels a little unsafe to continue with. If I keep healing or improving, I might get too strong. I might get too selfish. I I might start thinking too much of myself. I might think I'm better than other people, which is very threatening for someone who has shame. I just lost your question again. What was it, Steve?
I was talking about like this linear approach, right? How we think
Right,
that we're always going to increase 5 or 10% every year,
right,
but then we might hit these pockets that might last. Anyway, you got it.
right. Got it now. Got it. Right. So, um, our idea is that we should be able to continue to effort and make progress at a 5% incline every week, every month, every year, or whatever the percentage. But the truth is that we always uh, growth comes in cycles. There's moments where, in months or weeks, where we feel like there's a lot of growth happening, we can see a lot of change, and then weeks or months where things might get quieter, more still, seeming like nothing big is happening. That's natural, and that's a variable that's impacted by how much stress is going on in your life, how much connection you have. The more stress and the less connection, the less you're going to be growing, and the more you're going to be trying to just maintain. When stress is lower and connection is higher, we have more room and support to grow. We have more ability to touch into our regulation and to be able to connect with people in a way that feels meaningful and supportive. And often that kind of connection is partially what helps us grow too. When we can actually connect with other people mm, in a meaningful way, uh, our nervous system feels nourished. It feels helped. Our well-being feels supported, right? And that's another thing. It's like we don't have to wait till we're healed to support our well-being. That can be something we work on every day in terms of being in partnership with our nervous system in our life, instead of being disfranchised from our life and trying to get everything done, and then once in a while checking in with our body and going, oh my God, I'm shot, or I'm so tense, or I hate everyone. Like, oh, how did I get here? Well, you've been stressing yourself for 3 weeks straight. You haven't taken much of a break or a rest, and you haven't even come back in and checked what you need. You've just been pushing through everything. And then a very predictable backlash will happen. If we go through periods of not listening to ourselves, we'll plateau. And often during that time, we'll also get a little judgmental, maybe a little shamed about why we're not moving forward. That's always a good time when you're plateaued to actually get curious. I, I wonder why I'm hanging out here. Maybe there is an important message to be received about being at a plateau. In other words, is it okay for your nervous system to not have to be efforting all the time to improve? Which of course it is. But it depends on how long a plateau you stay on. A plateau for a day or two or three or a month is fine, but 10 or 15 years may feel quite a long time. And actually, probably a lot less than 10 or 15 years, like a year could feel like a long time to be sort of stuck.
I appreciate the advice to our friends and listeners who may recognize themselves in a healing plateau and sort of what they might be able to do or ask or incorporate to move through or past that. And I also have people in my life who I've witnessed their healing journey, and they have moments of healing and transformation. And it can be intense, I guess, to name it. It can be a little scary, it can be intense. I guess I just want to offer you the opportunity to speak to those individuals who are noticing these potentially rapid changes and not maybe understanding who they are or where they're going or what it all means.
Sure. So when we're changing, we're actually going through a kind of a transformation, right? Like many of us live our lives kind of unconsciously and automatically on autopilot. And as we start re-inhabiting our lives, re-inhabiting our bodies, becoming more conscious, more intentionally aware of what our mind and body is doing, we suddenly develop an inner compass, but we also develop a capacity to see how much we have shortchanged ourselves, how much we haven't been present to our life, or how much we've been busy trying to make our life good enough to live that we've been not really living it now, waiting for this future date when life is okay or you're okay enough to live life. And all of that conspires against our being in life now, right? And healing really is about finding a way back into life where you can feel authentically engaged and connected and safe in your own body. And that's the foundation, right? Safe and comfortable inside, comfortable outside. But then we're also, when we're in that space, we also have more contact with impulses to give, impulses to be of service, impulses to offer what we can offer during our path on this planet. And I think that that's also a place where once we can get a sense of what our desire is for ourselves and for the world, it actually can be both transformative, but also strongly uplifting, right? We move from a problem orientation, a fixation on our own shame or all the problems in the world, to an idea of also not seeing what's wrong, but also being able to see simultaneously what's right in the world, so that we don't have a jaundiced view of there's only suffering and there's only pain, because there is a lot of that, but there is also a lot of love, a lot of compassion, and all is there. And sometimes we selectively pay attention to only the good or only the bad. But the more that we can drop a bit into regulation, the more we have capacity to hold more of the whole thing of life. And that is part of healing too, holding more of us and being able to hold more of the world in terms of not having to fragment us or the world to feel safe, but allowing the world to have its good and its bad, to allow ourselves to have our strengths and our weaknesses, and not necessarily have to feel so horrible about us or the world in this moment. How does that land?
Gives me a real sense of hope, and I hope it gives that to others as well. And one of the things I continually love about your teachings and the ways you approach it, you also you often say, you just need a toe and ventral. This idea that you like just put like the tiniest little part of you into a regulated state, and that helps. And sometimes that's enough, and sometimes that's a Herculean effort,
Yes.
but that's enough. And I'm hearing similar things here, like this a little bit over a long time, potentially, depending on what's happened, is enough. You don't have to find the answer by Friday.
Right. Right. And you're not a failure if you're not a failure if you're not perfected. Matter of fact, no one's going to get perfected. The idea is um, we don't change in some ways who we are. We actually come into relationship with who we are because instead, most of us relate to our labels about us, our shameful judgments about us, other people's opinions about us, instead of a direct sense of our own value, worth, and lovability as a human being. Again, shame robs that side of us for many of us. And so we don't even consider it.
And that definition you gave to me really lands back to how you started this, of helping us understand the difference between healing and a cure, and helping us maybe come away from that idea of a cure, that there's a different version of me. There is a new me here. And the reality is it's me. And I'm just refining, I'm healing, I'm distilling.
Right. And the more that we can locate our life with a couple of toes or more in ventral, the more everything shifts, the more our perceptions of ourselves shift. Because once we're in a defensive state, fight, flight, or shut down and collapse, we no longer are seeing ourselves objectively, and we're no longer seeing the world as it is either. We're seeing everything through the lenses of our state. And that changes everything. So healing is another way of looking at healing is being able to see things as they are instead of seeing everything as we are, meaning being able to see the truth outside instead of the distortion that our defensive states will always overlay on any interaction.
Friends, this is one of the things we do here is share some questions that come up basically for Jeffrey and I. We start this maybe a day or so ahead of time and say, what do you want to talk about? What's up for you? And this was up for us. So it was really juicy for us to share with you. But the other thing we do is we answer your questions. And there are a number of ways that we do that. And there's also maybe a little apprehension about like, do I really want to send these two dudes my question? It's kind of scary. So, Jeffrey, I'm wondering if you could talk to maybe the scariness and then maybe let people know if they have a question where they can send it, so we can bring it into this space and hopefully help them.
Sure. So, anything that you're curious about or struggling with or have wondered about, we'd love to hear from you. We read every question that comes in. If it's on email or on our voicemail, we listen to it. And there is no wrong question. So if there's something you've been thinking about sending in, please give us a try. Send it in. And to do that, you can leave a voicemail at 1-866 357 5156, or you can send an audio file in an email. And if you can't attach an audio file, just send an email with your written question to hello@drjeffreyrutstein.com. And finally, I have a free gift on my website that goes into more detail about your defensive states and offers practices to help bring you back into regulation. And you can get that by going to drjeffreyrutstein.com/links, LINKS. That'll take you to another page, and then you click on free gift, and it'll take you right there. Steve, as always, I love our time, and I really enjoy these excursions we do.
Thank you, Jeffrey. I deeply enjoy the time as well. And on behalf of our audience, thank you for sharing this all with us.
My pleasure. My pleasure. Remember, this podcast is for informational purposes only and is not a substitute for professional health care. If you are struggling physically, emotionally, or mentally, please seek out a qualified healthcare professional. Thank you all for being with us today. I appreciate it. And until next time, bye for now.